Hello, Nerd Herders. You're listening to Go Chuck Yourself. In this episode, Erin and I will recap and analyze Season 2, Episode 8 of Chuck versus the Gravitron. That is a guarantee. I promise in this episode we are talking about Chuck versus the Gravitron. I know that you've probably been sitting at home going like, hey, when are they going to get to Chuck versus the Gravitron? Well, it's right now. We're going to be doing Chuck versus the Gravitron. How many more times am I going to say Gravitron? Feel free to send us an email at gochuckyourselfpodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions or stories you'd like to share. Maybe it's a question like, hey, why does Chris always start the shows in such a weird way? You know what, listener? I'm not sure. Why do I start the shows in such a weird way? Erin, do you have any ideas? She's not responding. Okay. Feel free to follow us on Twitter at GoChuckPodcast. Tweet at us. We always love getting some social media love. And make sure you like and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or, hey, wherever you get this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Now, make sure that you buckle up because we're going for a spin in the old Gravitron here on Go Chuck Yourself. Here we go.
That the fans of Chuck were called Chuckies.
Really?
I don't know if that's true. Well, someone else who was writing a review, so probably someone who felt just as awkward as us introducing the episode, referred to everyone as Chuckies. So I know we've said Chucksters a lot. So
we are Chuckies ourselves?
I don't know. I'm thinking maybe it's kind of like Trekkies. We're Chuckies, but we're also addressing Chuckies.
Right.
But that just makes me feel like there's a lot of Rugrats characters and then a lot of evil dolls in our audience.
Which
that's just all.
I mean, I've seen the metrics. I think that it sounds just about right. Hello, Chuckies around the world. You're listening to Go Chuck Yourself. My name is Chris Gillespie.
My name is Erin Arata.
Couple of Chuckies right here.
Couple of Chuckies. Is Chucky the doll based on Chucky the? Is one of them based on the other? Because they kind of look the same. Is that a thing?
I do not know.
We'll talk about that.
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right.
Go Chucky yourself.
Go Chucky yourself. Yeah, that's a very easy spin-off for us to do.
So easy. I can't believe it took us this long to get there.
But I do not want to watch it. That's the only problem.
Go Chucky yourself. Maybe we should do that for Halloween.
I would. Okay, that's all right. I'll do it for that bit.
That'd be funny.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot. This episode in particular, I don't know why, but it has me thinking a lot about Los Angeles, where Chuck takes place. And I mean,
that makes sense. It is set there.
But specifically, and I wanted to ask you this because I think you've lived there for almost a year at this point, and you've almost gone through a full calendar year in California. And I was wondering, why aren't all the characters in Chuck sweating all the time? Like, isn't it warmer? Like, they're dressed they usually wear pants. Sometimes they wear long sleeve shirts, but no one's sweating.
Okay. So Sarah and Chuck's family, and then Jill in this episode, presumably all grew up in California.
Okay.
So maybe they're a little bit more used to it. I mean, I think that structures in California are definitely built to release heat rather than retain it. So, while they're in the Bymore, it's definitely air conditioned. Like, a lot of locations will be air conditioned. When they're outside, I really can't tell you. When they're at this carnival, really can't tell you. But I have to assume that because they grew up in these locations, they're just used to it and don't experience heat the same way that we on the East Coast do. Mm-hmm. You do, I did. I think actually we find out Casey's also from California. I think all these characters are just from California. That's my only explanation that I can give you.
I guess this episode, this is the Thanksgiving episode for season 2. So I guess this would take place in November, so it would stand to reason that it's a little bit more mild. Yeah, it's a little nippy. This past November that I was here was very, very warm. Mm-hmm. But I think but in wintertime, generally it gets into the 50s. So. Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough.
So good question. Speaking of LA, I wanted to tell you a little story about my life. Actually, today, the day we are recording, I became a true Angelino. It took almost a full calendar year, but it happened today.
Okay. How does that work?
And I will tell you exactly what happened. I was at Trader Joe's, and the Trader Joe's cashiers are very friendly, and they ask how you're doing and what you're doing with your day, probably because their boss makes them. Not because they're interested, but because someone is making them. But, we're all trapped in this hell together, so I have to answer. And usually I just say, when I was a East Coaster, I would have said, oh yeah, seeing some friends, whatever. I would probably not give. I would be like, oh yeah, what are you up to? Like, not really give a detailed answer. Mm-hmm. But because I've been in LA for so long, it slipped from my mouth without me even having to think about it. Oh, I'm recording a podcast this afternoon.
Oh.
Then the guy said, what's your podcast? And I said, oh, do you know the show Chuck? And he said, I do. And I said, oh, well, our podcast is reviewing the show Chuck from a modern lens, and it's called Go Chuck Yourself. And he laughed. And so if I'm sorry I don't know your name, but the Trader Joe's cashier, if you are listening to this episode, thank you. I'm glad that my horrible small talk inspired you. But I've become an Angelino, and I now promote myself unashamed and by name. I shout the name of my podcast to whoever will listen.
That's awesome. Well, someone's got to do it.
It was very shocking hearing it come out of my mouth. I was not prepared. I don't know if the cashier was prepared. I mean, I feel like probably someone does this to him every day. But
yeah, probably hears about all the coolest podcasts out there. Kind of
that's
sends a shiver down my spine hearing about how open you were with that. I would definitely not do that.
I mean, I've started putting it on resumes when I apply to jobs. So I take pride in what we're doing here. I don't know.
I do too. I mention it in job interviews where it comes up a lot. And then I usually I take the same approach that you do. And I say, are you familiar with the TV show Chuck? And they oftentimes, almost always, I don't think I've had anyone say yes. I feel like I've only had people say no. So then I'm like, all right, off to a great start. So I'm like, well,
I also wondered if the cashier just said yes in order so I wouldn't explain to him what it was.
For the love of God. Yeah, I know. Don't. It's about the show. Fortunately for you, there's approximately 20 hours of you talking about Chuck available for him to listen to.
Yeah. Again, welcome, cashier.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Just a couple of I'm not an Angelino. Are you an Angelina? Because you're a lady?
I wrote, when I texted you about this, I said I'm an Angelina, but that was just autocorrect. I'm not really sure.
Okay. Because I read that and I was like, oh, so you changed your name to, you're like really Italian now?
I understand that could have been confusing. You could have thought that I had married Brad Pitt and then divorced him after adopting several children. Mm-hmm. You could have thought that, who's another, I had become a ballerina and also a mouse. You could have thought many things, but I meant Angelino.
Gotcha. Angelino. Yeah. Well, I would love to check in with our favorite bunch of Angelinos and Angelinas in Chuck, specifically season 2, episode 8 of Chuck versus the Gravitron. Just a bunch of Angelinos and Angelinas hanging out. I don't know. It seems like I'm talking about the Jersey Shore when I say that.
Yeah, it kind of does. So let's hop in. Well, much like we're hopping into a carnival ride.
Is there a recap before this episode, or should we just kind of give a little bit of context from the previous episode?
Chuck reconnected with his college girlfriend, Jill, who we thought was just like a girl who happened to have fallen in with a man who had ties to like spy stuff. But as Chuck's relationship with Jill heated up, we found out that unbeknownst to Chuck, but beknownst to Sarah and Casey, Jill is a Fulcrum agent. She took, I wouldn't say she kidnapped Chuck, but like Chuck doesn't know that she's an agent, and she has him off the grid without his tracking device in her car, and they're driving to some undisclosed location. So the previous episode ends with that happening.
Right. So Chuck seems to be in imminent danger. He doesn't know it.
Yes. Okay. The episode begins with a flashback to 2002, so we're not going to get immediate answers to whether Chuck is still alive, but Chuck and Jill are in the flashback. They look exactly the same, but they're wearing sweatshirts, so we know that they're 7 years younger or whatever. I don't know exactly how younger they are, but it's 2002. They are riding a Ferris wheel together, and we learn that despite his fear of heights, Chuck has bribed the ride operator to stop them at the top so he can ask Jill out. He rambles a lot, and one of the lines that he says is, "We've been friends for a semester now." And I just really laughed at that, because a semester's not really that long of an amount of time. But Chuck knows what he wants, and Jill does too, because she is receptive to his confession, and she kisses him. In the present, Beckman wants to know how Casey and Sarah possibly let Jill get away with Chuck. She says, "Find him, I don't care how, just do it." During that line, we cut into, we get a shot of her in her office speaking, which you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the first time we like see her in person, like not just through a proxy of a screen.
I don't think it's the first time, because I think they did it in the first season. Okay. I can't give you an exact moment, but I think that they did it.
I was startled by it because, like, usually it's just we see her pop up on a screen.
Yeah, it was. I don't know why. It was strange that they did that. I don't know why they did that. It was just for, like, a line, too, not even. It was just, like, a couple of words.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, on the one hand, like, of course they're filming her. Of course they have that footage, so why not, like, splice it in? But on the other hand, it made me think, like, oh, are we in D.C. now? And then we went back, and I was like, oh, I guess not. So, the TV was working on me. Casey is worried Jill is torturing Chuck, but Sarah says Fulcrum doesn't know Chuck is the Intersect, and they don't know that Jill has been made. So I remember in our first season, you yelled at me for using the phrase being made, but here it is.
Because you're in the Mafia?
Yeah, but apparently Sarah is too, because she uses the phrase.
She got made.
Cut to Chuck and Jill kissing in a hotel room. Chuck's phone rings, despite the fact that Sarah just said his phone was switched off. I remember this bothering me the first time I watched it too. But his phone rings, he doesn't answer it, but he has a ton of texts and calls and voicemails. Jill's phone buzzes, and Chuck picks it up to give it to her. He flashes on the text she got and realizes she's a Fulcrum agent, and he says, this can't be happening. Very, very suspiciously, he says he's going to go get them some coffee, and he runs out of the hotel room. As he's sprinting shoeless down the walkway, Casey grabs him and pulls him into a cabana. Casey and Sarah are both there in masseuse uniforms. Chuck starts to tell them about Jill, and they say they already know. Casey tells Chuck Jill's code name, and he flashes again and realizes that she's a spy.
Sandstorm.
That's
her name.
That was the name. Do you remember the Warrior Cats books?
I do not.
There were books that were called Warriors, and it was about cats that lived in the woods, and they had like a little society, and one of them was named Sandstorm.
Ooh, I should go check that out now. Yeah, those books are written for 26-year-old men, right?
I have them, well, maybe. I have them here, so if you want me to mail them to you.
Yeah, please.
I brought them with me in the move.
Oh, that's good for you. I like, going back to Chuck, I appreciate that they kind of are diving right into it and, like, telling Chuck at the beginning of the episode, because I was expecting, based on the last episode and the cliffhanger, that the following episode would be Chuck and Jill on the road and Sarah and Casey trying to catch up to him and try to let him know. But I kind of like, I mean, that could have been interesting probably, but I like that they just, like, right from the beginning, he knows that she's Fulcrum and establishing that tension.
I wrote down, actually, this is a really good time to bring it up because this was my next note, was that I thought, and I mean, I guess this could happen because I don't really remember what else happens in the season. This could happen at some point. But I thought it was going to happen that over the course of their trip, Jill was going to tell him some, like, sob story, and then Chuck was going to believe her. And when Sarah brought up that she was a Fulcrum agent, Chuck was going to have to, like, not trust Sarah. He was going to be like, you're just saying this because you're jealous. And I thought there was going to be a whole thing like that. And I was really glad that didn't happen because I didn't want to watch that. I also really like, we see Chuck flash a lot over the course of the show, but this was one of the first times where he kind of drove home that, like, he saw a flash that he didn't want to see, and he was, like, rejecting it, and I thought it was some really good face acting and some really good writing. Like, I just liked seeing that it wasn't just, like, information that he gets that's useful. It was, like, this was a horrifying thing for him to learn, and he's really upset about it, and he's like, no, I don't want to flash, I don't want to know. So I thought that was cool. Since Fulcrum doesn't know Chuck is the Intersect, Casey and Sarah tell Chuck to go back to Jill while they stand by in case things go south. Casey says, Fulcrum pulled one over on us, let's return the favor. We get some really intense orchestral music as Jill and Chuck are drinking coffee together. There's kind of like a choir in the background going like, ah, ah, ah. And that transitions right into the Cake theme song, so that was fun. Back in LA, Chuck and Jill make plans to go out that night. Once Jill leaves, Casey calls Chuck into his apartment. Chuck talks to Casey and Sarah about how he thought Jill was normal. He sells this really well, and he has the crisis that he has pretty often in the past couple seasons of wanting a normal life and being really sad when something that initially seemed normal and that seemed like it could lead to, like, a future of non-spy stuff turned out to actually be spy-related. Beckman tells Chuck that Jill must have been taken on by Fulcrum while they were at Stanford, which makes total sense because we know that spies were recruited there. She says that Fulcrum uses leadership seminars to find potential agents, which I have a lot of questions about this because why would she know that about a secret organization? Like, they didn't even know what Fulcrum was.
She could have, over the course of time, gathered intel about it. Maybe she's learning more about it.
But I was just wondering, like, shouldn't it have been like the CIA uses leadership seminars? But then I was thinking,
true.
like, the CIA uses that symbolism course that you hate, so maybe they don't use maybe Fulcrum has its head on straight. They should use leadership instead of art and symbolism or whatever.
That's why all the competent, strong agents are Fulcrum agents.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Beckman asks Chuck to use his relationship with Jill to try to infiltrate Fulcrum. Sarah says Chuck isn't ready for that, but Chuck agrees to do it. He says he's doing it as revenge for the times that Jill has betrayed him, which I really didn't like. I completely understood and liked him doing it, but like doing it as revenge, I was like, come on, Chuck, like, whatever. In the next scene, we see Ellie, and it's so nice to see her. I forgot how much I missed her.
Oh my God, what have you been up to, Ellie?
I know. I wanted to ask her that, but what she's up to is cleaning a lot, and she's very stressed because Devon's parents are coming to visit for Thanksgiving. Apparently it is Thanksgiving, and
Surprise.
they are, Devon's parents are very judgmental, so Ellie is kind of freaking out, and she's doing a bunch of test turkeys, she's cleaning a lot, she won't let anyone sit down because the furniture is perfect, etc., etc. Morgan shows up, sneaking through Chuck's window, and apparently his plotline this episode and this season and whatever, apparently he really likes turkey. So he has forsaken his favorite number 2 side dish, and he just loves the turkey now.
All about that Turk.
We have a scene where Ellie is removing one of her test turkeys from the oven, and her hair is blowing, and French music is playing, and the turkey and Ellie are both filmed as really sexy. And Morgan walks slowly towards the kitchen, barely containing his mouthful of drool, I'm sure. Ellie feeds him a piece of turkey, and then takes a bite of it herself. She thinks that the turkey is too dry, and she throws it away. Morgan is horrified by this, and I absolutely agree with him because that's a horrible waste. It's a whole turkey.
Yeah. I know, yeah. It was done for comedic effect, but it was definitely hard to watch.
Yeah. So I'm on Morgan's side there, but I am on Ellie's side when she uninvites Morgan to Thanksgiving. I think he should have already been uninvited because of the fiasco last year. That was a disaster. But especially, like, Ellie has in-laws coming. Like, why would Morgan be there?
Well, I have this whole theory that there's like this... So Morgan and Ellie have this pseudo-sexual relationship that's rooted in Thanksgiving foods. And I think it's because Ellie doesn't feel deep down like Devon is giving her the appreciation that she's seeking by preparing Thanksgiving dinner and working hard. But Morgan really appreciates it. So she instead finds the satisfaction through Morgan, and they have this weird kind of give and take of celebrating Thanksgiving, and it's satisfying for both of them on a deep carnal level.
I can buy that. I feel like they are trying to backpedal on the Morgan Ellie thing now. I feel like I mean, it's been a little while since I watched the first couple episodes of this season, but I feel like they've maybe had references to it that it was happening in the past, but it's definitely less like that Morgan is like, oh, I'm in love with Ellie now. And I liked about this scene that, like, although, like, Ellie's hair was blowing and everything, it was definitely, like, the focus was on the turkey and the focus was on, like, their relationship about dinner and stuff more so than, like, Morgan wanting to sleep with Ellie. So I did like that. I like that we don't have to deal with that anymore. I don't blame her at all, though, for uninviting him. Even if he's not being exactly creepy, like, I think it's totally fair if you're having a family Thanksgiving, like, your brother's weird best friend, like, he can find something else to do.
And that he does.
That he does, because we cut to the Bymore, and Morgan is talking to Chuck about his fears of a lonely Thanksgiving. Big Mike overhears this, and he informs Morgan that Jeff and Lester also don't have plans. They ask Big Mike if he's inviting them to dinner, and he says, God, no. He asks them instead to stand guard at the store overnight to make sure no one steals the Black Friday merchandise. So just like last year, when he used the same poorly trained employees to do something they'd never done before, they have to act as security guards. We find out later that Big Mike has a very sophisticated security system that sends alerts to his cell phone. So I don't know why he even needed, like, I don't know. I feel like these people are going to get into more trouble than they would if he just left the store empty.
Yeah, so. We also find that Jeff and Lester have done this for years.
Yeah. And Lester doesn't know what turkey is. Like, he's like... So, like, he asks later, like, he's like, so the turkey volunteers to be killed? Like, he doesn't understand the concept of turkey, so I don't know.
I think they could have made it interesting if if Big Mike says it's time and a half or it's double time working on Thanksgiving during the day, because that would have been, like, a real incentive, and I could see them all wanting to do that if they don't have plans, but it was just like, what? You're going to force these people? Don't you have... Yeah, I don't know.
Leaving that plot line behind for a couple minutes, Jill calls Chuck and asks him to ditch his security detail and come to a surprise location with her that night. Chuck is a little bit alarmed by this, and he asks Sarah for advice, and Sarah says that Jill is going to try to test him to make sure he's under her spell. Sarah says, imagine I'm Jill, and the moment is romantic. And we are reminded, because we may have forgotten, that Sarah and Chuck also have sexual tension. It's kind of like that scene in John Tucker Must Die, and Sarah is teaching Chuck how to kiss, but a kid doesn't show up and say, ooh, kiss her again. So, favorite movie. You don't seem to be reacting to that, but that's a really good scene and a really good movie. Chuck is a little dazed by almost kissing Sarah. As he leaves, we see that Sarah is not as unaffected as she might have appeared. Casey says that Jill bought concert tickets recently on her credit card, hopefully for a Five for Fighting concert.
Ayo.
Casey and Sarah plan to wait for Chuck at the music center. In reality, Jill's surprise is another carnival. So I know you haven't seen Shazam yet, but there is a scene in it that takes place at a carnival, both in a flashback and in the current times. So this is one of Zachary Levi's first carnival scenes, but apparently there's something that he does.
He really excels at them.
Yeah, they bring something out in him. Jill brings Chuck up in a Ferris wheel, and this time she's bribed the ride operator. They share a pretty intense kiss, despite the fact that Chuck knows that she has betrayed him. Then Jill says, I'm sorry, and she points a gun at him. She tells him that Fulcrum wants to eliminate him, but she doesn't want to kill him.
Right, so Jill is pointing her gun at Chuck. Chuck freaks out. Jill explains that she works for Fulcrum and that they are looking to eliminate Chuck. Jill has complicated feelings about this because she's, quote, not a killer, and, quote, this is not what she does. Chuck continues begging Jill not to shoot him. Jill relents and explains that there is a Fulcrum agent watching her who expects to see Jill bring Chuck to a car in the parking lot.
Does he have a name?
He does have a name. His name is Leader.
Wow,
Codename Leader.
That keeps it simple.
Yes, it does.
We know what his job is.
Yes, he's the leader, and his name is Leader. Just wanted to take a moment, ask your thoughts, Erin. What do you think about Ferris wheels?
Do I like them?
Yeah, thoughts, concerns, questions.
I like Ferris wheels. I think that I like the idea of a Ferris wheel more than being on a Ferris wheel. We actually had a conversation about this weekend with a couple of my friends that the Ferris wheel, it's very exciting to get to the top, but then once you get to the top and you're coming back down, you've already seen all the views and you just kind of want to get there, but it's stopping because everybody else has to get to the top and have a time to look around. Yeah. I do like them, but I think that when I see a Ferris wheel, I'm really excited to get up there, and then when I'm actually on it, it's less exciting. Like so many things in life. But I did ride, when we talked in the last episode about how I had just gotten back from London, I did go up in the London Eye, which is a Ferris wheel for those of you that don't know, and you get to see all of London and Big Ben and whatnot, and it was cool. It's sponsored by Coca-Cola, so in line you can get Coca-Cola products. It's it's kind of on a pseudo boardwalk kind of thing, so there's a thing of the London dungeons that's kind of like a boardwalk haunted house, and there's also something across from the London Eye called Shrek's Adventure. Fun fact for you. It's Shrek's Adventure.
Like the Shrek?
Yeah, like the Shrek. It's a DreamWorks thing, and they had some How to Train Your Dragon merch, which was a little bit confusing, although it is the same company. That is not a part of Shrek. Mm-hmm. Maybe that will be a crossover we get one day. I would love that. Maybe Toothless is the son of Donkey and the Dragon.
Oh my god, I wish I didn't ask you for your thoughts on Ferris wheels.
What are your thoughts on Ferris wheels?
Doesn't matter. Sarah and Casey are speeding towards the music center where the concert is being held, allegedly, when they realize that Chuck's GPS signal is not coming from the music center. They pull a U-turn and head towards the carnival. I don't want to interrupt you, but having lived in LA, I was very worried about them having to get from one location to another location quickly. I really felt the tension here. They're not going to be able to do that. They should just go home. Yeah. Chuck's dead.
No, yeah.
Sarah and Casey, they're speeding towards the carnival. Jill brings Chuck to the car at gunpoint, so they're back on the ground. As they're walking through the carnival, Jill sees the other Fulcrum agent who, like we mentioned, is codename Leader. He's a bald man with a mustache wearing a leather jacket. Really creative character design, folks. He informs Jill that Sarah and Casey are closing in. He knows that somehow. So Jill needs to eliminate Chuck now. Jill refuses to pull the trigger, so Leader reaches for his gun, but Jill points her gun at him. As this is going on, Chuck runs away into the carnival. Leader tells Jill that she's making a mistake and punches Jill in the face to chase after Chuck.
That was very unexpected.
I was
very startled.
As Chuck is running, looking for somewhere to hide, he notices a broken Gravitron ride, which in this case is one of those rides that you may have encountered, one of those spinning rides where is it centrifugal force pushes you against a wall? Is that the right kind of force?
I believe so. I have never ridden one. I wrote in my notes right now, this is my nightmare. Literally, I do have nightmares about the scene that follows. So I don't know. But yeah, I think whatever force pushes you against the wall and you're in there and it spins really fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it keeps you. So it may, some of them go vertical and you're spinning. Mm-hmm. So Chuck goes into it. It says it's broken, but he leaps into it. He thinks that he's safe because he's hiding. But Leader pops up holding his gun. Leader is all, come with me, Chuck. And Chuck is all, no way, Jose. So Chuck hits the activate button inside the Gravitron. That's right. The button to start the ride is inside the ride. So that means that someone, one of the passengers has to be ready to start and stop the ride. They have to take...
Or the ride operator just rides it all night.
Somehow the ride starts spinning and Chuck and Leader are thrown up against the walls. Leader makes to peel himself off of the wall and he starts crawling along the wall towards Chuck because he's being forced against the wall. Chuck is trying to crawl away from him. I like the idea of the scene, but something feels off. I don't know. Something about the physics of it just seemed like I could clearly tell that they were not spinning. There was something about it that just, I was like, this is kind of weird looking.
I think one of the reviews I read talked about how this was the first use of a Gravitron in a action sequence. Mm-hmm. I think it was bold of them to do it. I think it was kind of a good use. Like if they already knew they wanted to set it at a carnival, I thought it was kind of like cool to like see Chuck in the various like carnival rides. Mm-hmm. But I don't like. Yeah, I think that the idea was much like riding a Ferris wheel. The idea of this was cool, but then when it was actually happening, I was like, this is kind of not as interesting to watch as I would have thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can go back to that in a little bit. So the ride eventually stops, causing Chuck to fall on top of Leader, knocking Leader unconscious. Chuck hobbles out of the Gravitron and runs away. By this point, Casey and Sarah have arrived at the carnival just in time for Chuck to escape into the Hall of Mirrors and reflect on his, reflection. Jill also enters the Hall of Mirrors. Do you have any thoughts on the Hall of Mirrors, Erin?
Have you ever been in a Hall of Mirrors?
I have.
Okay. I had this, I always thought, because you see Hall of Mirrors a lot in carnivals. You see Tunnels of Love. And I always thought that I was going to encounter those more. And I don't know if they don't exist or if I've just never seen them or if they're kind of like an old time thing that I just haven't been to. But my answer here is I've never been in a Hall of Mirrors. Okay.
Yeah, that's, they have one at Canopy Lake Park.
Oh, okay. I haven't been there. I should have gone there. I feel like I was wanting to go there, but I didn't. No.
I've failed you as a friend from New Hampshire.
I was closer to Six Flags New England growing up. I have been to Storyland.
Okay, nice. Yeah. All right, that's why we can hang. That's good.
Yeah.
So as they gaze at their repeating reflections in the Hall of Mirrors, Jill and Chuck talk about how Jill got involved with the CIA and Fulcrum, surprising no one. Like Beckman suggested, she was recruited at Stanford. I feel like if I worked for Stanford's Department of Community Relations or Admissions, I would probably contact the producers of Chuck and say, hey, stop implying that all of our colleges, the only purpose of our college is to recruit evil government agents. It's really making the college
I wonder if
look
they
bad.
Had to write to Stanford and be like, we want to do this with our show. Is that okay? Or if they could just do it.
Stanford's like, how do you know about our CIA operations?
Yeah, maybe that's a thing. Maybe we just don't know that it's a thing. But Stanford was like, yeah, let them just put it in there because people got to know.
They'll just hide in plain sight. If they, you put it in the show, no one will think it's real.
Exactly.
Anyhow, Jill explains that she thought that it seemed like it was a good opportunity at the time. She didn't realize what she was getting into. It wasn't until she was in too deep that she realized that it was too late to get out of it, which is how I feel about this podcast. Kidding. Jill disappears, but Leader shows up in the Hall of Mirrors with his gun drawn again, so Chuck freaks out and starts running into the mirrors. Just as Leader is about to shoot Chuck, the mirror behind Leader explodes, revealing Jill, who shot Leader through the glass. As Chuck and Jill escape the Hall of Mirrors, Sarah and Casey tackle Jill and put her in handcuffs. And now the following day, we start our morning off at the Buy More with Morgan, Big Mike, Jeff, and Lester. I guess this is Thanksgiving. Morgan points out that having him, Jeff, and Lester guarding the store seems kind of like overkill, which I agree because the store has security cameras. The store has an alarm system. The store is locked. Also, why wouldn't they have loss prevention associates working on this, not 3 sales associates?
Yeah.
I think it's dumb. But Big Mike makes a speech about how the first store that he worked at, Husky Lads Big and Tall, was
for the more than average man.
Was robbed on Thanksgiving 1988. And he tells a sad story about Husky Lads throughout the Burbank area went without breeches for Christmas.
I really thought that was very funny.
It was. I felt bad for all those Husky Lads out there.
I know.
Big Mike also explains that his wife, aka Lady Big Mike, is dealing with the family, and he's going to go off fishing.
Were you shocked? Did you know he was married? Because, like, what about all his dalliances with, like, Harry Tang's wife? And, like, what? He's married? I'm very upset by this. He has a family.
Big Mike is a very morally complex character.
Why isn't Emmett upset about this?
Is Emmett in this episode?
I think they reference him, but I don't think I don't think I saw him.
Must have taken time off for the holiday. Good for him.
He went to go see his lady.
So Big Mike locks them all in the store, which, like, what do they think? What does he think they're going to do? But I don't know. Over at Castle, Sarah and Casey interrogate Jill as she's hooked up to a lie detector. They ask... It's
the simplest lie detector in the world. You don't have to read, like, the little lines. It just says true or false.
Yeah.
Positive, negative.
And they ask her mainly basic questions, her name, her alma mater, her college major, whether or not she's part of Fulcrum. Then they ask her the location of Leader. Jill reveals that she knows where Leader is hiding, which is in a mobile medical unit that is in an office building in downtown LA. Sarah asks her if it is a trap, and Jill says no. And then the lie detector confirms that this is true. It's not a trap. If Jill is a CIA agent, perhaps she was trained on how to fool a lie detector test, though. So we can't be positive that she's telling the truth. Sarah apparently agrees with me because outside of the interrogation room, Sarah informs Chuck that although he may want to believe that Jill is the same person he went to college with, they cannot really trust Jill. Back at the Buy More, Morgan and Lester are about to eat frozen turkey dinners, the saddest frozen turkey dinners I've ever seen, in the little plastic trays with
they were incredibly
plastic
sad.
On the top. As this is happening, Jeff partakes in his Thanksgiving tradition of setting a tripwire inside the store. Morgan complains that they are missing out on so much that Thanksgiving has to offer, but Lester has no idea what he's talking about since he has had too many of these Buy More Thanksgivings. Morgan proposes a plan to sneak out of the Buy More and retrieve an actual Thanksgiving turkey. Jeff, for once, not being a total useless idiot, somehow manages to hotwire and disable the alarm system for the Buy More, allowing Morgan to squeeze out the doors and escape, and he promises to return for Jeff and Lester, who are still trapped in the Buy More. As Jeff walks away from the alarm panel, he manages to trip on his own tripwire, which is also part of his Thanksgiving tradition, and triggers the alarm. This sends an emergency notification to Big Mike's cell phone, which Big Mike receives as he's nearing his fishing spot in the middle of the woods. Big Mike drops everything and starts to run back to the Buy More. As you said, why does he have people inside the store if he's just going to run back anyways when he gets the emergency notification?
I have no idea, but I loved it.
He was running pretty fast.
I loved seeing him in his fishing gear. I just got so much joy out of this.
As this is happening, Ellie and Awesome receive their own emergency notice of sorts as well. It turns out that Devin's parents call him to let him know that they can't make it for Thanksgiving dinner.
This is also how I feel when plans get canceled.
This is the first instance of the Awesomes being canceled, soon to be followed by the Hulu show, The Awesomes, being canceled, not being renewed for a fourth season.
Was that that's the superhero show? Okay, I never saw that. It's like Seth Meyers is involved. Right?
Yeah, I during my sabbatical, I watched all of that as well.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's nice. It's pleasant.
All right, cool. Great.
At this point, Ellie is relieved, excited even, not about the Awesomes being canceled, but about her in-laws not coming, or soon-to-be in-laws. However, I think if I were Ellie, I would be livid, because she did all this work for these people, cooking and cleaning, for like multiple days, and then all of a sudden, the day of, they cancel? Like, why? I would lose my shit.
Yeah, well, I was not sure which way they were going to play it, because I thought either way would have been fine. But I mean, I'm happy that I think she's just so relieved that they're not actually coming, that she doesn't have to worry about it anymore. That, like, you know,
I guess so. But it sounds like it's like the ultimate screw you of like you had to do all the work and go through all the mental anxiety of having these people, and then it doesn't happen. Anyhow. Yeah. Well, Ellie and Awesome, unlike me, are positive about the situation, and Awesome says that he looks forward to a typical Thanksgiving with Chuck and Morgan, to which Ellie admits that she uninvited Morgan. How could she do that?
How could she do that? I feel like she doesn't need to apologize.
No,
here.
It's fine. At the same time, they hear something rummaging through their trash and assume it is an animal, but no, Instead, it is the human raccoon himself, Morgan, who is digging through their trash looking for it.
And he's in there. He's in there a
He's
lot.
full raccoon.
Only his legs are sticking
full out. Full raccooning right now.
Or coyote, because we have coyotes here in LA that rummage through the trash.
Interesting. Yeah. But he's digging for that whole turkey that Ellie threw away the day before, which is, he was like, hey, I think it's good. You just put it in an empty bag. I don't know why
he didn't take it sooner. Mm-hmm. I feel like he didn't need to wait a day to come back and get it, but whatever. Mm-hmm.
Seeing this moment of desperation, Ellie feels bad for Morgan and hugs him and apologizes for uninviting him to Thanksgiving. Morgan understands that she's been stressed out and that he too has been stressed with work and the whole Chuck and Jill thing. Oops, Ellie is surprised to hear about the Chuck and Jill thing because she did not know about that and demands that Morgan tell her, which he agrees to as long as he can invite Jeff and Lester over for Thanksgiving dinner. Back at Castle, Casey and Sarah are nowhere to be found, leaving Chuck alone with Jill.
Which is ridiculous, and they should have known better.
Jill is still strapped to the interrogation chair, so Chuck asks Jill if he can ask her some more questions while she's hooked up to the lie detector. So Chuck is all offended that Jill has been lying to him this whole time, even though the first episode that Jill was in, Chuck lied to her constantly for the whole episode. And now Chuck is all indignant and like, well, I need to get to the truth. I need to be, now that you're attached to a lie detector, I need to get the information from you. Why don't you hook up to a lie detector? You were lying to her the whole time.
See, this is I feel like we have a role reversal here because that's a very, I feel like I usually say that kind of thing, but I was on board with this. Not that I think that, Chuck deserves, I don't know, but I thought this was kind of a nice moment from him. I feel like it was understandable that, he just wants something in his life to be real, and he's just, really upset by thinking that, their whole relationship was a lie. I didn't think the lie detector was necessary. I thought it was more of a plot device, but I like this conversation.
Mm-hmm. The conversation, which goes as followed. Chuck asked back at Stanford when we were dating, was that for real? Jill says yes. Lie detector is true. He says, you really liked me. There were real emotions. She says yes. Once again, true. Did you love Bryce too? She says no. Lie detector says that is true. And then he asks, did you really sleep with Bryce? And she says no. And we find that is true. As this is happening.
Wow, the whole crux of the show was a lie. Someone didn't sleep with Bryce. Amazing. What restraint Jill showed.
As this is happening, Casey and Sarah and a SWAT team break into the makeshift operating room where the Fulcrum doctors are working to revive Leader after he was...
Leader's level of injury is pretty fast and loose throughout the episode, I would say.
Sometimes he's fine, sometimes he can't move, sometimes he's being operated on.
He is wearing a sling in a later scene, which he takes off and then picks up 2 guns and proceeds to, hostage negotiate. And I'm sure, CIA training, you learn pain tolerance and everything, but, he was under anesthetic, having surgery, and then he's fine.
So back at Castle, Chuck continues to ask Jill questions, specifically why she lied to him about being with Bryce. She says that it was because her Fulcrum advisor told her that she had to break up with Chuck. I mean, good for Fulcrum for having, an advisory program at college. I think that's really progressive, and I think will help the Fulcrum really students.
Nice. Yeah.
Just to have someone if you want to talk to about how you're feeling about Fulcrum, how you questions or concerns you have about it being a turncoat government agent, being in this rogue cell inside the CIA, someone to help you work through it.
That is really nice.
Your advocate.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this person told her that it would make sense for her to break up with Chuck, and she figured that saying she hooked up with his frenemy, Bryce, would be the easiest way to do that. Jill continues saying that she's never wanted to hurt Chuck, as he was her first love. And
wow.
I'm sensing that Chuck is completely vulnerable. Just like Sarah was telling at the beginning of the episode. Jill's gonna try to strip down his defenses. Chuck asks if Jill wants to try to give it another shot once all the spy stuff is over, and Jill asks him to free her from the interrogation chair first. Chuck does this, and Jill stands up and says yes, she does want to give it another shot, and they kiss. So for the first time, Chuck is completely absorbed in a kiss with Jill, so he doesn't see that the lie detector, which he's still hooked up to, is showing negative. Jill is lying. A moment later, Sarah calls Chuck to let him know that they have Leader and are bringing him back to Castle. Chuck tells Sarah that this is great, and we pan over to see Jill holding Chuck up at gunpoint, saying that she's sorry.
When Sarah and Casey get back, Jill pulls guns on them too. She has 2 guns, 1 in each hand. She points them at them. She's not pointing one at Chuck, but I guess Chuck has just been so downcrest and everything. He's just at the computer. He's apologizing profusely. This is the scene where Leader shows up. He takes off his sling that he was wearing and picks up Casey and Sarah's discarded guns, apparently fine to lift them and point them and everything. He and Jill tell Casey and Sarah to take them to the holding cell, where they lock Casey and Sarah in. Jill comes back, and Chuck asks how she could do this. She says,
It's complicated.
It's complicated. I guess this woman really did know Bryce pretty well after all. Jill tells Chuck to just do what Leader says. Leader asks Chuck to show him the access screen for the Joint Intelligence Database, or he'll kill Sarah. So Chuck is forced to do this. Jill puts him in a holding cell too, and on his way in, he grabs the castle manual that he referenced earlier in the episode that I don't think we talked about.
Oh, no,
is a manual reference.
Yeah, that's my bad. Chuck read the entire castle manual, which apparently there's an instruction manual for all things castle and how all the technology works inside of it. And he was bored, so he read all of it because he's smart.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. He figures out that Jill and Leader are looking for Bryce because they believe he's the Intersect. So when Casey says, what are you doing with that manual? It's top secret. Chuck says, yeah, so am I. Because he does not want them to find out who he is. Mm-hmm. Chuck uses the manual or his knowledge of it to lock Leader and Jill out of the computer and lock him, Sarah, and Casey in their bulletproof cells. When Jill and Leader show up, he says, checkmate, when he should have said, checkmate.
Missed opportunity right there.
Missed opportunity. Everything seems good until Leader puts a bomb on Sarah and Casey's cell. He says he'll blow it up if Chuck doesn't open the doors. Apparently, all castle rooms are equipped with these kind of panels, so you can, do things, do security things from any room in castle, including these cells. I don't know if that's a good idea, but it helps in this situation.
Yeah.
Not wanting his friends to be blown up, Chuck unlocks his door and goes with Jill and Leader. They apparently don't need the computer anymore, and they're just going to leave. I don't know why, but once they're gone, Casey and Sarah get a message on their control panel that Chuck has also unlocked their door, and he will be taking Jill and Leader to the Bymore. Mm-hmm. In the Bymore, Leader trips over Jeff's tripwire. In the ensuing commotion, Casey and Sarah rush in to stop Chuck from getting shot. Jill runs and Sarah chases her. Chuck yells, Sarah, don't hurt her.
I enjoyed this. I feel like we haven't had a Bymore action showdown in a while.
That's true, yeah. As Sarah is searching the break room for Jill, we see Jill come up behind her with a gun and plan to take the shot. Then Chuck comes up behind her. He says he can help her if she comes with him, so she puts down her gun and agrees. Meanwhile, Casey and Leader are fighting, and as that happens, Big Mike runs in and body slams Leader into a TV display. He probably ruins the equipment that he was trying so hard to protect, but I did love this.
Yes.
He says, did Grimes put you in charge? And Casey says, yeah. So I love, and also some of the reviewers I read love, that the B plot of the Bymore has intersected with the A plot of this tense chase.
Yeah, I think that's always good when that happens with the Bymore action sequence, that they cross paths.
Yes, absolutely agree. So rounding out this plot line, Chuck gives Jill one of the Matrixes as a getaway car. I mean, it's pretty conspicuous, but she's gonna have that. She asks him to come with her. He says he can't, and then he puts the car into detention mode, so she's locked in.
This is one of the Nerd Herd mobiles.
Yes, yeah. Chuck says he was going to let her go, but when she was about to kill Sarah, she made that decision for him. Sarah overhears this. There's some more excessively dramatic music, and then Chuck leaves. I don't know where he goes. It's another. I mean, I have to ask the question again. Where does Chuck go?
Wonder what Chuck is doing right now.
Yeah, he just walks away, leaving Jill in the car. I don't think he knew that Sarah had come out, so I don't know. Maybe he was going to be hey, I locked Jill in the car, but I don't know. He just walks away, and it's a cool shot, but I don't know where he's going. I feel like he should have stayed with her. In the final scene, Sarah and Chuck meet up outside Chuck's apartment for Thanksgiving dinner. Sarah looks I wrote 2000s good. She looks really good, but specifically in the 2000s. She's got a real 2000s look going on, I guess, was my point.
With her denim skirt.
Yeah.
It was a skirt.
They have, it's hard to tell from the outside, but Chuck talks about how he's sorry about the mistakes that he made and that he's too trusting. That's another theme. And another prominent theme is Sarah saying, what makes you special is that you're not like every other spy. So they have kind of a nice moment. Jill is nowhere to be found. I assume that she will not be in the next couple episodes, but we will find out. But we are back on the Chuck and Sarah train.
Choo-choo.
Rah Rah Riot is playing, which I was pretty excited about. We move inside to the Thanksgiving meal where Morgan and Ellie are talking about Jill. Their conversation about Chuck and Jill's relationship is not as fraught, or like Ellie is not freaking out as much as I thought she would be for the information that Morgan has shared. But they do want Chuck and Sarah's relationship to flourish and Chuck and Jill's relationship to go away. They say it will be a Thanksgiving miracle if Chuck and Sarah show up together. Although I don't really know that that's true. But the door opens and Chuck and Sarah walk in. They all sit down at the dinner table. Jeff and Lester are there, which Chuck is alarmed about, but he accepts it. And it actually seems like a really nice dinner that they're all having. It might just be the music playing and everything, but I feel like it just looks nice. Like Devin puts the turkey down, like everybody seems really happy. Nobody's doing anything weird. Ellie and Chuck have a moment together where Chuck says that Stanford, Bryce, and Jill is a story from his past, and his new story is Ellie, Sarah, and these friggin' Yahoos. That's what I say whenever I open Safari and it defaults to Yahoo. I'm like, friggin' Yahoo. We are reminded again that Lester doesn't seem to know how turkey works. He asks a lot of questions about what turkey is, and eating turkey. And then the episode ends, it fades out with them all enjoying a meal together around the Thanksgiving table. It was a pretty nice moment.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but like this episode tricked me into thinking that it was actually like almost Thanksgiving. I got really excited for Thanksgiving. I was like, yes, Thanksgiving's right around the corner. I was like, wait a second. And I realized while I was thinking about this that I potentially watched this episode the day that is literally the farthest point away from Thanksgiving, because I watched it in late May. So that's exactly 6 months after Thanksgiving and before Thanksgiving. Yep. I could not be more removed from Thanksgiving watching this particular episode.
I think it's going to be crazy when we watch the next couple episodes and there's Christmas.
I know. How are we going to be able to get into the Christmas spirit? I don't know if I can do it. Are you going to be able to help me find the Christmas spirit?
Maybe. I'll work on that.
But that was the Chuck versus the Gravitron. Season 2, episode 8, the Thanksgiving episode. They didn't do much with Black Friday this time around.
No, they really didn't. The only reference was just that like they had Black Friday merch or something. Yeah. Or not merch. I guess merch.
Yeah, makes sense.
Merch is short for merchandise. Some little facts from our friends at Wikipedia is that the text that Jill gets references Uncle Tobias, and that's a character from Arrested Development, which starred Tony Hale, who plays Emmett, who is not in this episode, but that's a reference to him.
Oh, that's interesting.
That was fun. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. I was just like, oh, what a weird name. But now that I read that fact, I'm like, oh, of course.
Do you know if that's like an actual intentional Easter egg, or was that just something that?
I'm sure it's intentional.
Oh, wow.
I mean, why? Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure. I feel like they're pretty smart writers.
Yeah, I guess so. Why do people keep referencing that character in everything? Like, because Tobias in Arrested Development is David Cross's character, and they also reference him in Infinity War because he's in one of the collector's cages. Why do people keep? And then I was at this office the other day, and they had their conference rooms were named after different doctors, and one of the conference rooms that was across the hall from me was called Dr. Tobias Funke.
Okay, well,
he's got so many.
I guess
so many weird.
Maybe that's your like what is the Jim Carrey movie where he's like obsessed with a number? You know
27.
Yeah, so that's yours, but yours is Uncle Tobias.
That makes sense, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised. Sorry, what else do you have?
I have a goof where it says I have no way of confirming this. You could probably confirm this if your memory was better, but I don't think you'll know. During the first television broadcast of this episode, Morgan could be heard calling Ellie Sarah as she is throwing away test turkey number 1, but this was edited out of future broadcasts.
Really?
So I don't know why anyone missed that. I don't know if it was because we have two options here, that he was calling her real name, which is Sarah Lancaster, right, or he like mixed up Ellie and Sarah because those are two female characters on the show. I do that a lot in my notes, so I don't blame him.
Yeah, it's very confusing. I also, if a character said that, I don't think I would even pick up on it, honestly. Yeah. I would just be because I'm just so confused.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's all my from our good friends at Wikipedia.
Not only like so many people were confused by it, like so you have Joshua Gomez who says it, and then you have the director, whoever, who doesn't like make a note of it, or like a PA doesn't say like that was a goof, and then the editor actually goes through, and then like wow, That makes me feel better. I feel like we're not as big of idiots as we think we are.
Yeah. Great. Okay.
I would like to do a little segment of It's a Sign.
Okay.
There was a sign that I saw this time. It's in the hallway of the Buy More, going to the break room. And it says, "Through these halls walk the smartest employees in the world."
I like that a lot. Like, that's some irony there.
I appreciate the hyperbolic irony in this particular situation.
That's really nice. I did not notice that, so I'm glad you picked up on it.
But also nice that they're giving positive message to the employees. Like, hey, you guys are the smartest employees in the world. Yeah,
that's really nice, actually. That's nice to be appreciated in that way.
Yeah, it is. Really is. So would you like to move on to Chuck, Marry, Kill?
I would love to.
Great. Chuck, Marry, Kill. Erin probably won't want me to explain it, but I'm going to. God damn it. It's the part of the show where we identify one element of this episode that we liked so much we want to marry it, and one part of this episode that we did not like so much that we'd like to kill it. What was your marry this week?
I would like to marry the entire B plot. I thought, like, apart from the, like, logic issues of, like, Big Mike locking them in and Big Mike asking them to do it anyway, I loved him, like, fishing. I loved him coming back. Like, all the Big Mike stuff. I actually, like, I wrote in my notes that, like, I actually liked Morgan in this episode. I thought that him escaping and trying to get a turkey for Jeff and Lester was really funny. I thought that Big Mike coming and actually being the one to get rid of Leader was really funny. I fully enjoyed that whole plot, and I'm glad, because some of the Buy More B plots are, as we have discussed before, are a little lackluster in my opinion, so I really, really liked this one, and it was nice to see these characters be, like, a part of the episode as a whole, and not just, like, a ridiculous, like, thing that's happening in the background. What about you?
Mine was kind of weird, but I, like, in terms of set design, or I'm assuming this is set design, but I realized that I'm really impressed by the castle's computer system and all the monitor displays. Because if you look at it, it's like 9 computer monitors, and they all have that kind of whatever desktop display they have in all the windows. Like, that's pretty impressive. Whoever had to sit and come up with it. I was especially thinking of this when they were going through the Fulcrum agents, going through that roster, and they had all the code names on the side. I'm like, someone had to. That's pretty impressive. Like, that they would have all the code names and the photos, and I just think it's underappreciated.
Yeah. And actually, I didn't write this down, but so I'm going to ask our audience to do work, I guess. But the code names are references to different like movies and TV shows and things. Especially, there's one that's a reference to something that Adam Baldwin is in. Like, the code names are actual things. So the writers or set designers or whatever did pay attention to that. But I did not care to make a note of that particular information, but you can look it up if you're interested.
Cool. What would you like to kill?
So I would like to kill I would not get rid of the scene of Ellie and the turkey, but just one of the mechanics of it is that Ellie takes a piece of turkey and puts it in Morgan's mouth, and then he takes a bite, and then she takes it and puts it in her mouth. I thought that was really gross and weird, and I did not like it, and no one remarked upon it, and I just she could have just taken her own piece. She could have still fed Morgan, like, that's fine, but then she should have taken a separate piece, because I don't want Morgan's saliva anywhere near my mouth. So that's my kill. Do
you notice it seemed like Morgan just got a haircut before this episode? It seemed like his hair was extra sharp. I feel like as the episodes go on, his hair just keeps getting sharper and sharper.
That's fair. He's slowly turning into, like, the plastic Santa from the Santa Claus 3. He's just gonna be a plastic man.
Duh, that classic pop culture reference that everyone understands.
I saw that in theaters. I saw it in New Hampshire too. So
I feel like you're trying to put that on me for some reason by saying that.
Yes.
I didn't make you go see that in theaters.
I was in New Hampshire, Chris. It's your fault. Everything that happens in New Hampshire is your fault.
Oh, I know. Somehow. I know.
Yep.
My kill for this week, and we had kind of touched base on this a little bit earlier, so I'm glad that you kind of also were feeling this way, but I didn't really like the carnival stuff. I appreciate that they had the kind of, like, novel setting in the first half of the episode instead of in the second, like, third act, because I feel like that's usually what they do. Even though a lot of times they do have, like, a novel scene or location in the first or second act, but I just feel like it didn't really add anything to the plot or story besides like the writers were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they had, like, an action thing at a carnival? And they're like, yeah, it'd be cool if it was in the Gravitron. Like, I did not look at any bonus features or anything like that, but I feel like when I do look at the bonus features, there's going to be some point where someone is going to be talking about this episode and be like, yeah, it was an idea we were floating around in the writer's room for a long time. It was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had, and they just shoehorned it into this particular episode. So, and
I think that's
and cool. I thought the visual metaphors that they had, like the Hall of Mirrors for when Jill is revealing her true self and Chuck is all concerned and is questioning everything he knows. I feel like it was kind of on the nose. So.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I didn't think about it in that way. I watched this episode in 2 halves. I paused it halfway through and then watched the next day. So I actually, I saw all the carnival stuff, the first day, and then I saw the rest. So I completely forgot about the carnival.
Yeah, it's really forgettable because it doesn't come back up towards the end. Like, if they had to go back to the carnival for something, I feel like it would make more sense, but it just feels very just kind of like throwaway at the beginning.
Yeah.
Pretty forgettable.
Yeah, the hotel in the last couple episodes where, Jill's boss's stuff is in the hotel room, that felt more relevant to the plot and, everything than this did. So I would agree with you. So ostensibly, this is the end of the Jill plotline, at least for the immediate future. I don't personally remember what happens with her, so all of this is fresh in my mind. I just knew that she showed up and was bad. So we kind of wanted to do a little Chuck, Mary, Jill here, where we kind of wrap up our thoughts and feelings on the character of Jill. Chris, what do you think about Jill? Do you think she was a good character? Do you think she was underutilized, overutilized? Do you understand her motivations at all?
I do not understand her motivations. And I think that she was underutilized, perhaps, because I think that Jill is obviously not as dumb or naive as she makes Chuck and the team think in the first 2 episodes. Because the first episode, we think she's just a scientist and Chuck bumps into her. In the second episode, we're still also thinking that.
Yes.
But at no point during the second episode is it even alluded to her being a spy. But it would make sense because there were opportunities for that because they brought her to Castle multiple times. Yeah. She was alone in Chuck's apartment with Ellie and Awesome weren't there. And
she asked a lot of questions where she asked a lot of questions about their missions, and that was under the guise of jealousy about Sarah, but she could have definitely and then she was asking Chuck how did you become a spy? And I thought that was she's trying to get intel on the Intersect or something. But
yeah, at no point does she slip at all, and she doesn't really seem to be excited or change her behavior at all when these spy things start happening. She seems like she's pretty even keel the whole time, and I don't think that she even. I don't know if it would have been too much if they had her dropping little hints that she was a spy throughout the first 2 episodes. Because they maybe could have done it in a way that you kind of think maybe she is, maybe she isn't, and kind of confuse the audience a little bit. So then when you still have that big reveal at the end of the second episode, everything falls into place. But I was like, why because watching this episode, I'm like, okay, so she's definitely a Fulcrum agent, but they never make you think that in the previous 2, but they also don't explain why she didn't make you think that. Because she doesn't, I don't know, they don't make her seem like she's this awesome, cool, cutting spy. She seems very uncomfortable with the whole thing. Yeah. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I wasn't sure, this is part of the reason why I don't remember if she comes back, but I wonder if she does and she's fully evil or something, because I feel like the way that they do it really could have gone either way, where she was lying about just getting pulled into it and actually she totally believes in what Fulcrum stands for and she's really bad and she was just trained to defeat the lie detector. Or is it actually she just got pulled into it, she really doesn't want to be there, she really did kind of have feelings for Chuck, etc., etc. I feel like the lie detector but the lie detector stuff was cool, because I liked the negative flash that Chuck isn't looking I liked all of that, but it was also confusing because we're is she trained to fool the lie detector, or are those her true things? And I feel if for the purposes of understanding who she is and everything, I don't really know. A lot of reviewers talked about how she was kind of a flat character. I think that's fair. I think her and Chuck have banter. They maybe have chemistry, but I don't think that she felt very plot devicey and much like the security system in Castle or the security system in the Bymore. She felt she was in the episode to do what needed to be done to make the plot continue and not really anything else.
Yeah.
Poor Jill. She could have been so much more, but
pretty complicated feelings about Jill.
It's complicated.
So now talking about the Scooter scale, ranking this episode, scale 0 through 5, 5 being the highest we could possibly give an episode of Chuck. For me, I'm going to give, I don't really have much to talk about with this, but I'm just going to give it a 3 out of 5. I feel like this was just middle of the road for me. Like I didn't really have strong feelings either way. I was kind of like, yeah, take it or leave it. So 3 out of 5.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4. I really enjoyed this episode. Particularly, I liked the B plot, as I've already said. But I like how the B plot and the A plot interacted, and I agree with what we talked about over the course of this episode. Maybe if I was scoring it now, I might score it slightly differently, but I'm going to stand by what I thought. Just ending the episode, I feel like they always wrap up these plot lines with like guest stars and everything like relatively quickly. Like I kind of wish we had a little bit more of Chuck and Jill, and then like we really got like a sense of betrayal if she had been here for like... Instead of 2 or 3 episodes, if she'd been here for like half a season, I feel like that would have been better. But I do think that, like, accepting that the episode itself felt fully formed to me. Maybe not the carnival things, but like it felt like a cohesive story, and I ended it feeling satisfied and like happy with everything that had happened. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Okay. Yeah, that's valid.
Yeah.
Cool. So episode 8, season 2.
So we will leave you, wish you a happy Thanksgiving. We hope that you enjoy your turkey and your mashed potatoes and whatever else. We hope you enjoy the parade and the football games and whatever else you decide to do on your Thanksgiving.
Yes. The next 2 episodes are not Christmas related, but I think the third one is Christmas. It's coming up. Not that Thanksgiving can't be its own thing. I know people are like all, upset because they're like, why can't Thanksgiving why does it have to be the start of Christmas? Why can't it just be its own thing? That's not what I'm trying to say. Just letting you know, like we got 2 more episodes before we have to get like all holiday themed.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I have not watched them yet, so I didn't know. I can save some. I don't have to put up my Christmas decorations just yet.
Also coming up, the special 3D episode.
Oh, I thought you were going to say also coming up the end of this episode of our podcast.
Well, that's also coming up right now. My name is.
When is the 3D episode?
We are 4 episodes away from it.
Okay, that's cool. I'll get my glasses, I guess.
I guess so.
I don't think they'll do
It's going to be
anything.
interesting. I'm really looking forward to it because the DVD set comes with 3D glasses.
Oh, that's exciting.
So I'm going to be ready.
Cool. So you can experience it.
Yeah. In all its glory. Is it going to work? I'm so interested. I'm so excited to do that one.
Yeah. Oh, great. Me too. Now. Well,
on that note, my name is Chris Gillespie, reminding you that food, particularly Thanksgiving food, and especially if you're Morgan, is sexy.
And I am Erin Rada, really agreeing with that because I am very hungry and I'm very excited to end this so I can go eat. So without further ado, I will say that anything is possible.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Chuckies.
All you Chuckies out there. A couple of Chuckies. Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, that's a good one. We should use that one next time.
Thanks for listening. Special thanks to freemusicarchive.org and the artist Hadakoa for providing us with our theme song, Warm Up. Make sure to email us at gochuckyourselfpodcast@gmail.com and tweet at us at gochuckpodcast. Remember to like and subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts and write a review if that's something you need to do. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.